The premium sector and Bentley and other premium vehicles constructed in the UK, they work by slightly different economics, and they won't be caught up quite in this mass market massacre. So, and we're good at those premium vehicle construction, so it won't be complete wipeout, and there'll be lots of variations. But essentially, the core of what you're saying is a lot of truth in it.
The government wants us to buy more electric vehicles, but as consumers, we don't seem that keen to do it. The government is mandating that car manufacturers must sell a percentage of their output as electric vehicles, or they will face fines for every car that is above that mandated limit. But again, how can the automakers do that if we're not going to buy them in the first place? And the automakers are saying, quite rightly, well, if you want people to buy them, you better reinstate all these subsidies which encouraged it. It's a bit of a mess, dog's breakfast, you could call it. So let's look at where we go from here, because what's at stake is the very future of the British automotive business. I'm going to speak to Nick Molden. He's a motoring industry analyst, chief executive of Emissions Analytics. Nick, good afternoon. Let me start with this. Can you explain the government-mandated sales targets for EVs that car makers are expected to meet, and the penalties if they don't?
We have a final end date after which you cannot sell internal combustion engines, and then there are stepping stones all along the way of increasing percentage of each car manufacturer's sales of zero emissions vehicles that they need to meet. Currently, it's 2035. You won't be able to sell afterwards. The Labour government is planning to bring it forward to 2030. In this year, 2024, manufacturers need to sell 22% of the cars they sell as zero emissions vehicles. There's a big grey area in the middle as to what happens with hybrid vehicles, but that in simple terms, 22% is what they need to hit now. And eventually 2030 is when they won't be able to sell anything but pure electric.
But will the British car industry be in a position to sell only electric vehicles in just over 5 years' time? I mean, if we want people to buy electric vehicles in scale now, the only way I would have thought you can do that in a way that's affordable is that they end up buying cheap Chinese cars, which are flooding the world market. And in doing so, that's curtains for the British car industry.
You say the British car industry, there isn't really a British car industry in the sense of an industry owned by British investors.
I'm British-based car
British-based.
industry.
Well, so there is a key difference here. The UK is basically saying it will not put tariffs on cheap Chinese electric vehicles. Europe is putting tariffs on cheap Chinese vehicles. There's undoubtedly...
So is America.
Indeed. So Britain is positioning itself, in my opinion, to attract as much Chinese inward investment into the UK. Say, we will let you sell all your cars so long as you come and make as many of them as possible in the UK. And in doing so, get one over the European Union.
But hold on. China has a massive surplus of electric vehicles at the moment that it's trying to dump on world markets. It's tougher now because Europe has put up, as you say, tariffs. America's put up even stronger tariffs. Chinese factories are churning out EVs at a rate that they can't sell. There is no way between now and 2030 China is going to build an EV car industry in the United Kingdom of mass output. It's just going to want to sell us those cars that are already on these massive transporter ships heading for Britain.
But they've got a real premium on finding markets for these vehicles. So there will be a deal somewhere in the middle where some will be made, or at least final assembly in the UK, as the price of lots and lots of imported Chinese EVs. And if you look at it from the British government's point of view, it is a really quick and easy way of meeting the CO2 goals of the UK as a country.
And the price you will pay is the end of Nissan up in Northumberland, the end of Ford, which is already pulling back, the end of Vauxhall, which is already thinking of going, and of Jaguar Land Rover as well. The Chinese will simply undercut them.
There is, to a large degree, that is probably true. There are variations on that with Nissan and also Toyota about the future of hybrids. And it may well be that hybrids have a longer runway than standard internal combustion engines, which will be a sop to Nissan and those who are big in hybrids. For the premium sector, and Bentley and other premium vehicles constructed in the UK, they work by slightly different economics, and they won't be caught up quite in this mass market massacre. So, and we're good at those premium vehicle construction, so it won't be complete wipeout, and there'll be lots of variations. But essentially, the core of what you're saying is a lot of truth in it. Yes.
And that's the direction Jaguar's going in too. It seems to want to be more Bentley than the old Jaguar that we knew, which competed with Mercedes and BMW. But you know as well as I, there are not a lot of jobs at that end of the market. It's a very niche, specialized market. It's a prestigious market, but it doesn't employ tens of thousands of people. And it would seem from what you're saying that the government regards hitting net zero as more important than saving what's left of the British car industry.
Well, I think that's probably true. It may not be what they admit, but if you look at it, there is a very, very strong attachment to the net zero goals, and the government sees the decarbonisation of cars as the low-hanging fruit. Or if we don't do that, we won't stand a hope on anything else. So we absolutely have to decarbonise light duty transportation. It really is very hardwired into the government position of this government, but also previous governments as well. Every change has been a tinkering around the edge. This is a real totemic policy.
The Tories left a lot of this in place. I understand that because there was a party political consensus about this. There was never even much of a debate in the House of Commons about it because there was such a consensus. But it's fraught with difficulty, Nick. I'm not sure what the unions have got to say about this and why they're so quiet at the moment. And I would suggest to you that the collapse of the massive Northvolt battery factory, which has got into bankruptcy in Sweden, is surely a body blow to hopes of competing with China. Batteries make up about 40% of the EV electric vehicle value. Northvolt has now gone down the Swanee, despite billions in government aid from other governments via Brussels. And so we're now going to use Chinese batteries for our cars as well, even if they are made in Britain.
Well, in fact, up until now, we've been largely using Chinese batteries anyway. So it was a question of whether you could supplant China as the main source of batteries. But it was quite clear.